right, great. Well, thank you everyone so much for coming today. We're super excited to hear from Ryan Bentley from Youth Dynamics and hear about his 1,000-mile kayaking trip from Owyhee, Nevada to the Pacific Ocean. Our programs director, Sammy Castonway, is unable to make it today, and he's so bummed to, he extends his his apologies for not being able to be here today. And he wanted me to share. He's actually off shepherding some geology students. If you know Sammy, he is a geologist, and so he's shepherding some geology students through the Owyhee as we speak. So I will share his short intro with you all. So Ryan is an Ryan is an adventure leader for Youth Dynamics, and in summer of 2020, he invited Sammy to join as a guest geoscientist to talk about some of the rocks and formations. After the trip, they stayed in touch, and in one night, they hiked the Owyhee's ridgeline from War Eagle to Hayden Peak, slept on the Turntable Mountain under the comet Neowise. And another time, Ryan actually attended one of Friends of the Owyhee's trips, Yoga in the Wild Owyhee, while it was raining buckets in Sucker Creek, so they hid in a cave, I think as Ryan mentioned a little bit earlier. So Ryan told Sammy about his desire for this journey and on multiple occasions on his planned sabbatical. And so along his route at the end of the Owyhee section, Sammy picked him up out of the water, and they had lunch in Ontario. And Ryan told Sammy a bit about his journey, and he's been just really wanting to hear more and see pictures. So, like I said, he's super sorry he can't be here today, but we're super excited to hear from Ryan. So Ryan, go ahead and take it away.
Yeah, thanks. Well, I know a lot of you out there. Some of you I don't know, but it'd be cool to share an adventure at some point. So yeah, right now I'm joining you from beautiful Horseshoe Bend, Idaho. It's a little away from the Owyhee, but if I go to the top of the hill, I can see the front range of it. And yeah, my trip that I got to do was part of a sabbatical for my work, where I'm the adventures director in Idaho. Youth Dynamics is a much larger organization with bases in Washington, Oregon, and Idaho, and we exist to create opportunities for young people to wrestle with big life questions like who they are, what they want, what they believe, and have been able to partake in that mission since 2002, when I was 18 years old. The first time I went down the Owyhee was in 2009, and down from the middle section from Three Forks down to Rome, and it changed my life forever. Up until that point, it was the hardest trip I had ever done. It rained cats and dogs. We developed a whole new term that we call floating lakes, and we got to live in a floating lake for a week out there. Many of you on this call have been down the Owyhee with me, or I've tried to drag you down in the last couple of years, and so hopefully we'll be able to share that adventure here soon. This idea for a sabbatical trip started in 2009 when I was paddling down a long flat section below Scotts Dam to Rome. It was a huge headwind, and I thought, man, this is hard, but this water goes all the way to the Pacific. I wonder if I could ever do that. And so that's where it started. And then this spring I got to do it, and it was super rough. I'm gonna start sharing my screen here now, so bear with me, and then Catalin, you can tell me if it's working or not. But to give an idea of where I started, it was at 5,000 feet above sea level near Owyhee, Nevada. I would have started higher if it hadn't still been winter up there. And so ended up starting at the pipeline put in. And so if this is where we put in at, then I'll just kind of zoom out to show you where we ended up at, or I ended up at, which is right here at Fort Stevens in Oregon. So about 1,000 miles and then about 5,000 vertical feet of loss, and got to go through two of the deepest canyons in the United States, one being the Owyhee, and then one being in Iron Point Canyon, and then one being in Hell's Canyon. And so here's a picture of me. This is how I kind of envisioned my trip would go, that every night I'd be by the river and the grass would be green, have a candle, you know, it was going to be super beautiful. But in this trip, out of 33 days on the water and 1,000 miles paddled, it either snowed or rained 25 days out of that. And it was trying for me. This is what I ended up looking like a lot. This is on the Snake River on day like 24, 25, every lick of clothing I had on. And if you can tell by the preformed concrete back here, then you can see that I was sleeping in an outhouse. Fortunately, the Bonneville Power Administration cleans them regularly, and so it wasn't half bad. Let's see what I got next here. I think I got a little video of something here. This is a video I took one morning when I'd slept through the night and in a rainstorm, and what turned out to be a bunch of poison oak. This is kind of what I sounded like in my head most of the time. So take 30 seconds and watch this here. Or not.
Oh, it looks like it just needs to finish buffering.
Yeah.
But
we'll see if this one here buffers very well or not. But this is at the put in here at Pipeline. And so when we got here, you can see that it was snowing. It was snowing really good, and it was really muddy. I just finished getting the last of my mud out of the tires. It was a beautiful spot. I had never been here before, again, around 5,000 feet. And as we hiked along the pipeline, you can see the markers there that indicate the buried oil pipeline. We saw all sorts of tracks from elk and deer and what we thought were probably unshod wild ponies. But it took us about 4 to 6 miles to hike out there, and it took a few trips. And I'll see if this one is buffered enough here to play. We'll keep moving on here, I guess. It's a funny side story. I just got done cleaning or when I got done with the trip, my truck had a little bit of a wobble, and I thought that it was because I had hit too many rocks. Turns out I don't clean my pickup truck very well, and drove it for a couple of months before I got in for alignment, where the people at the shop had to just get all the mud off of my tires. But to me, the Owyhee is super beautiful. I was super blessed to be able to see this part, and with this kind of dynamic amount of weather. I've never done the South Fork before. I've run the lower Owyhee from Rome to Birch Creek 46 times, but this was my first time on the South Fork. And the compare and contrast between the two was a severe gift. So often, you see an area that you love in one season, and you get to know it well in that season. But to see it and the change between winter and then spring was a huge gift, as got to see it even before the grass was sprouting out. And I feel like I got to know the area so much more. This is what our packs look like as we were going in. We had a lot of energy, and by we, I mean myself and my friend Micah, and then Sarah. And so the two of them joined me for the first bit of the journey, as the upper Owyhee is pretty rugged and pretty wild, and I didn't want to do it by myself. And so they joined me for about 100-ish miles of the trip, lasting about 5 days. As we did the upper sections, we had a ton of snow, and this is what we would wake up to many of the mornings. A lot of times the temperatures would be around 17 to 32 degrees. Fahrenheit. And then during the day, sometimes it would get all the way up to 40 or 45, which seemed like a pretty pleasant time. But as we were looking at the Owyhee, I was amazed at how much I still don't know. I've been running down in that area since 2009 on the water. And then in 2016, 17, we started through Youth Dynamics to run climbing trips as well. And, kind of thought that I knew it well, but was amazed to see it in this kind of dynamic environment. I'm used to the powerful influence of the sun. I'm used to the way that the sun catches the canyons as it goes along, but not as intimate with its cold darkness in that time, or the fullness of the moon in the cold. And that impacted me a lot. The wild that it brings out of the area and the remoteness and harshness of it struck me in a whole new way. We had all the gear that we needed, had dry suits and all sorts of things. You can see here, this is our friend Sarah, fully decked out, but still, there wasn't anyone around. We often run the Owyhee in Youth Dynamics in these self-supported IK fashions and are used to not seeing anybody, but the added element of snow and cold definitely got us in a spot where I got hypothermia once or twice, and I'll tell you about that here in a second. But this picture is taken on the South Fork, right near the border of Idaho and Nevada, at around 25 cubic feet per second, as best that we could guesstimate by the information that was available. And so the first 80 miles that we went was more of a wrestling match between an IK and rocks and our will than anything else. And so most of the time we were in the water, pulling ourselves through, and we were felt blessed to have these flat spots where we could paddle along and not hike. I'm going to try this here to see if this will play here in a second. But as the East Fork / the main fork joins the South Fork, the canyon in there is amazing. It reminds me of something out of Bryce Canyon. And the days that we got to see it, it was cold. Even from this initial still shot, you can see that it's snowing, but we had a headwind, and it took us quite a long time to go the 20 miles we needed to go for the day. But the way that the rhyolite canyons shoot up all around, and with that elevation difference going from not very much snow to packed on the top, with the way the clouds came in, it was remarkable and a true wilderness experience as I've ever had. Let's see if it plays here. This one here, I'm not too concerned if it has sound. At least we get to see some of the outline of the canyon with the sun breaking through. It was spectacular. I apologize that isn't playing. I tested them out, but I must have crossed in front of something on the way out. And now my computer is frozen up. Let's see what I can do. Give that a hot second. So, at any rate, it was interesting to look and see as we were going along of kind of the whys. For me, for a long time, and for most people that have ever been out there, the Owyhee grows on you in a huge, beautiful way. And so it was something that had lots of options of things to do on the sabbatical, but this is a trip that definitely begged to be done in my mind. And as I was doing it, this idea emerged of why And for me, one of the big whys is that I think that it's important for the adult versions of ourselves to live up to the dreams of the younger selves. And so it was, yeah, a true gift to be able to do this trip, to went along. I'm not going to try to play this video again, but just another shot of the canyonscape. The South Fork stretch isn't well known for its, extreme whitewater, but the section from the cabin down to the confluence at Three Forks had some really excellent class 3 and class 4 water. And so we got to read and run all of this on site. Right here, we figure that it was somewhere around 300 to 700 cubic feet per second. As we hit the East Fork, it grew a lot. And again, with the way that the junipers come all the way down to the water, it was an extreme gift to be able to run it like that. If any of you have ever done the Three Forks trip down to Rome, you'll know Widowmaker, and it's got to run this on one of our clearer days. And when we ran from Three Forks down to Rome, something came together. All of my prayers seem to have been answered, and we had clear skies, good temps, good water, and a trip that we usually run in 5 or 6 days with clients took us less than 24 total hours. And as I was finishing up through this section here at Widowmaker, had this brilliant idea that we should keep going on. And if you know this spot here in the background, this is Chalk Dome at around 25 miles between the section of Rome and Birch Creek. And as I was getting to the end of the Three Forks down to Rome section, thought maybe I should try to paddle from Rome to Birch Creek in 1 day or less. And so I'd done this before with some friends back in 2015, and we did it in 11 or so hours. But it seemed like it'd be good to try. My buddy Micah and Sarah, they didn't want to keep going, but I thought, well, I'll give it a shot. And on this day, I ended up making it, obviously. But it was a total of 72 miles on this day and something like 20 hours of paddling or so. But this is the section here that get to do a lot. This is the section that I've done some 40 odd times, taken literally hundreds of people down it. And all of those people having gone down, having had a transformative experience in their lives. I'm pretty convinced that God has a summer house down in there. And there's some verses from the Bible that echo through my mind. And one of them is that God walks on the wings of the wind. Whenever I go through the Iron Point Canyon, there's usually a wind that goes through, and I'm reminded of that. And the gift that we're able to share of wilderness and solitude with the young people that we take down this spot is amazing and a true gift, and something that resounds in my soul, and for many of you even on this call here today. So when I did this section, this was probably the most impactful part of the entire trip for me. It was from about 2 o'clock on Easter till about 1 o'clock the day after. And I wanted it to be a time of celebration and thankfulness of what I've been able to do. And it was pretty awesome to be able to take the time and think. The look on my face on this picture is because it was about to get dark, and I was a little scared. This is a blurry picture, but it was an amazing gift as I entered the canyon to have the moon come up. And I was able to paddle from around Montgomery Rapid to Birch Creek by the light of the full moon without a headlamp. Had the entire river to myself. And I don't know if I have ever had a state of, in my worldview, worshipfulness to my Creator in my entire life as I did that evening. And I hope that is something that sticks with me until I die. And it didn't end super well. I ended up getting hypothermia because I fell in the water because I smelled bacon from another group at Birch Creek and fell out of my boat, and all my stuff got wet. Fortunately, I had an emergency kit and I survived. But that was pretty crazy. Moving right along, this is obviously the Owyhee Reservoir. Never been out there before, and I was blown away at what it is and what it offers. It was, again, lots of snow and rain, but one of the biggest memories I have of that section is at night there was a herd of wild ponies that came down about 50 to 75 yards, and I didn't get a picture of them, but to be able to watch them as they moved across the hills was an extreme gift, and something that I got to see them again the next day as I was paddling down the river. And then Frank, this sticker here that is bad reviews of national parks, and this is a little joke that I remembered a lot while I was out there, that the Sequoia National Park, there are bugs and they will bite you on your face. And so we always said it, they'll bite you on your face. There were 12 dams that I crossed on this trip. This young man is named Adam Miller. He's now an EMT, but I've known him since he was 12 years old, and he helped me at the Owyhee Dam transition from a boat and down. And so it was a real gift to be able to share this trip with quite a few people that have played a part in my life up until now. And Adam's gift to shuttle me around was awesome. And I get to be a groomsman in his wedding this fall. So that's pretty cool to see the next chapter of his life. One thing I thought was worth mentioning is below the dam, the sheer amount of work that the beavers have done over, I don't know how long. This is near Nissa. And this day, I pulled my boat over something like 30 to 50 beaver dams. It was awesome to see what they are creating down in there as far as riparian areas, the amount of wildlife, the amount of birds, and in the spring, the calls of all the birds sometimes was deafening, but a super awesome symphony. This part here is where the Owyhee and the Snake meet, and it was crazy to go from something that was around 50 CFS to whatever the Snake was running at the time, and to start to make some time. If I had ended the trip here at the confluence near Caldwell, then that would have been a trip in and of itself, because of the temperature, the snowstorms, the new exposure to a place that is near and dear to my heart. That might have been enough right then. But to be able to take it all the way to the Pacific, put the Pacific Northwest into perspective for me. It was great as I started to leave the Owyhee River drainage and talk to anybody. It became pretty rare that anyone had ever heard of the Owyhee. In fact, one or three people who may have had some different chemicals in their bloodstream thought that I had paddled from Hawaii and was going upstream. And so that happened on one or maybe two occasions. Again, another friend, this is John Henry Mitchell. He runs the fish hatchery for the South Fork of the Salmon. And he joined me for the stretch from Hell's Canyon down to Lewiston. And he has a vested interest in this watershed. And we got to paddle down with some of the fish that he was releasing up in the South Fork as we went along. This is another spot that's really important to me in my story. This is the confluence of the Snake River and the Salmon River. On the right, you'll see that the Snake at the time was running about 12 or 13,000 cubic feet per second. And then on the left is the Salmon, which at the time was running at over 40,000 cubic feet per second. 2 days ago, I just returned from this trip. We had just run it, was a staff training for Youth Dynamics. And we did the Salmon while I was at 3,000 CFS. And so to see the difference on this trip here, as I was going down to the ocean, it took us 4.5 hours to go 25 miles. And this last time with a motor, it took us over 7 hours to go that same distance. And if you look over here, you can't see it well, but there's some high water marks that this last trip that I just finished were a good 10 feet above me in some constriction zones. The trip didn't get much easier. The dams, they cause a lot of things to turn into lakes, and those afternoon winds got me. And then, as you remember, the spring was more than just a little bit wet, and so through the lower Snake 4 dams, I spent 2 out of my 5 nights in there in these outhouses, which I started to consider to be a really great shelter. And they even positioned them so that when the wind blew, it wasn't blowing into that little cove, but around me. And I considered it to be a super great resting place. On my trip, I used 3 different craft, the inflatable kayak that you've seen, and then a cataract through Hell's Canyon. And then there'll be a photo here shortly of my my surf ski that I used. It was an Epic V5. And so all total, I had about 80 liters worth of space. So what you're looking at in this picture is the whole of my kit going down the river. So as people would join me, they would help resupply. And so I'd get a resupply every 3 to 5 days or so. The mileage that we went was averaged out at 30 miles a day. And there weren't too many rest days in there. This is the confluence of the Snake and the Columbia. This is my father, Kirk. He went out and bought himself a surf ski and did a couple days with me in some of the bigger waves that we encountered. This day, obviously, it's nice and calm, but the day before we were bucking 3 and 5 foot swells through there. Pretty grateful. My parents got me on the water as a very young person, and it was a little bit of a Jerry fest when we were growing up with what we called them Kmart coffins at the time, going down the Wenatchee, and we had no idea what we were doing. Grateful that we made it out alive, but it was pretty special to be able to have my parents come out on the trip and spend a couple days in the rain with me. Yeah, we've gotten to do a lot of adventures over the years, and so it was special to be able to share that with them. This is as you're going down the Columbia and the entrance of Columbia River Gorge. You know, you think about starting out on 25 cubic feet per second, and then to jump onto the Columbia, which at this point was running somewhere between 150 and 200,000 cubic feet per second. I grew up in Wenatchee, Washington, and so the Columbia River Basin is home. And so to be able to jump out, you know, from the narrow canyons of the Owyhee into the Columbia River Gorge, it shed new light for me on what home is. There weren't many river drainages that I went by that I don't have a memory for. And so this trip really did turn into a bit of remembrance for me and a chance to be grateful and to be thankful for all the people that have made this trip possible. One of those is my buddy Benny. We grew up together, and we went through raft guide training together. This is near Boardman, Oregon, where he joined. His father Dave provided our shuttle as we went by, and so over the years of nearly most young men, Ben and I have made many mistakes in the outdoors and got lost. And so it was great to be able to share a bit of an adventure together where things didn't go so horribly bad. And Dave even sprung for a hotel room, and we got to sit in hot tubs after being cold for a long time. And so that was pretty special. I'll give it a hot second here, but most of you that have ever driven to Portland know about the winds in the Columbia River Gorge. You can see the tip end of my boat here, but this is remarkable day where I got a tailwind, strong flows beneath the Bonneville Dam, and no headwind. And it could make 5 to 6 miles an hour, but it wasn't so for most of the Columbia. That was time in early and mid-May where we had just a ton of storms that came through. I got to see Mount Hood one day, but I got to see 6 to 10 foot swells for many days. And there was near, no, I can't remember, we're near the Dalles that I made 6 miles for the entire day and paddled over 10 hours. It was character building for sure. We'll see if this one plays at all. Doesn't look like it. But you can see the fire that came through. I think it was in 2017 or 18 through there. So this is that same day of not having much wind and be able to carry speed. It was an amazing, amazing gift to be able to do that. And then here's the end. This is near Fort Stevens. This is the Columbia River Bar. If you can see my cursor, and if you can't, you just look at the picture here. Working from the left to the right is where the jetty is. And by the time I got here, I was pretty darn tired and didn't feel like it was worth the risk to paddle through that into the open ocean on that side. So I beached right here and then walked over to the jetty. It was very anticlimactic from a pageantry sense. There were no checkered flags. There was no one there that knew me. I looked and probably smelled like someone who had been outside for a very long time. Everyone on the beach gave me a very wide berth, and it was just for me in that time, which was kind of a huge gift to be able to sit in that reality of what it means to go through an entire river basin. There were 4 things that stood out to me on a personal level for this trip, and the first one is that being alone doesn't have to equate to loneliness. On this trip, I spent, I think, 22 to 23 out of the 33 days alone, which is by far the most I've ever been alone in my life without having, a real conversation with someone. And it was a gift to be able to at least crack open the box of what it means to engage in solitude and the learning, the celebration, thankfulness and gratitude that can come out of that. And from my worldview, even to be able to give thanks to my Creator and Savior. The second one is that I learned a lot of gratefulness in the midst of decision. There was no really good reason to do this trip except out of an adolescent sense of wonder. I wasn't carrying any vaccines to anybody. I wasn't exploring. It's a well-known area. And so there were a lot of people that thought that I should just go ahead and quit when it got hard. At one point, I got into some poison oak and had open sores all over, and they were hard to manage. I was tired, and it wasn't all very glamorous. But that idea of being able to be grateful and thankful in the midst of a hard decision, there was no one to blame but me, and no one to thank but me in that decision-making process. And to be able to celebrate the gift of movement, even if I was going less than a mile an hour, was something that's frankly pretty new to me. And it's a lesson that I hope to be able to carry on into the rest of my life. Third one was my sense of home. I'm pretty transitory in my work with youth dynamics, and home can often feel something of an illusion. But to be able to start in Nevada and work my way up into the true Pacific Northwest, and then the ocean. Like I said, there wasn't a basin that I went by that there wasn't some memory and some people that didn't come to mind. And so I'm super grateful for those people that have invested in me personally and have listened to me when it probably was hard, shared adventures, and have cared for me when I've been hurting. And so my idea of home expanded a lot in that time period, to something more than just a physical place to live, but that idea of home. And I hope something that I can offer. So often I see home as something that I consume versus something that I contribute towards. So coming back, some learning and some questions to dive into on how can I better facilitate a sense of home for folks. And then the last one is kind of a renewed sense of care for those around me. COVID for myself and for a lot of people was a little bit rough, and started to see people as red or as blue instead of valuable, precious people that are worth listening to and investing into. I didn't get to see a lot of people when I was out and about. There weren't a whole lot of organic interactions with a lot of the storms that came by and that kind of thing. But there were a few times. There was one dam that I was walking around, and a couple named Jim and I've got their names here. Jim and Tammy. They picked me up and they drove me around the Ice Harbor Dam, and they shared some food. And it was great to get to hear their story and some of the adventures they went on. But besides that, there wasn't too much. But as I was seeing people come and go along the river, and even just a wave, it was something that helped me in the process of seeing people as precious and worthy of investment, and not just to me, but I think also from my worldview, to see them as precious in the sight of God. So that was a pretty excellent thing that was soothing for my soul. So appreciate you guys bearing with me with, I'm going to stop sharing here. Bearing with me with the technical difficulties with the videos and that kind of thing. We've just got a couple minutes left here, but didn't know if there was any questions out there, as I tend to ramble a bit.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing your story, Ryan. It was super interesting, and definitely there's more to trips like that than meets the eye, I think. And it was really cool to hear the sort of, lessons you learned or things that you really picked up over the way. And just, it's kind of proves to you that solitude and nature really can teach you a lot of lessons about yourself. So yes, please, anyone that has any questions, comments, we'd love to hear them. So Debbie says, thank you, Ryan, for sharing about your trip. Amazing. Paddling all night? Wow. Yeah, that sounds intense.
It was great to be able to know the river well enough to be able to do that. You think you know something, and it's not until you do something in the dark and in the reflection of the shadows of the moon. I got it almost right, except for that one rock near the end. I will say that it was really more about the smell of bacon, or what I perceived to be the smell of the bacon from a camp that was nearby, that threw me off. But regardless, it was almost a golden run, as it were, but not quite.
Right. Well, if no one else has any comments or questions, we'll go ahead and end a little bit early. Yeah, I just want to say thanks again, Ryan. Like, it was really awesome to hear about your adventure, and I'm glad you took the time to share that with us. And thank you everyone for attending. This has been super fun.
Thank you.
All right, everyone, have a nice evening. We'll see you later.
Bye.